Book summary: Plato. Author: the architect of Western philosophy. Chapter 1, Childhood and Family, 428–427 BC, around 407 BC. Plato, whose real name was Aristocles, was born around 428 or 427 BC in Athens, the cultural and political center of ancient Greece. He was born into a wealthy aristocratic family, with his father, Ariston, a descendant of ancient kings, and his mother, Pryxian, who was related to Pericles, the illustrious leader of Athens. His family also included two brothers, Adimantus and Glaucon, and a sister named Petone, who later appeared in his philosophical dialogues, such as the Republic. From a young age, Plato was raised in a privileged environment, where he was exposed to the lofty ideas and values of the elite class. Plato's childhood was not merely peaceful days under the family roof. He grew up amidst the turmoil of the Peloponnesian War, 431–404 BC, a bloody conflict between Athens and Sparta. The catastrophic defeat of Athens in 404 BC, when Plato was just over 20 years old, shook his faith in democracy, laying the groundwork for his later political ideas. As a bright boy, Plato received a comprehensive education, from grammar, music, and physical training to poetry. He particularly excelled in wrestling, a skill he later likened to the struggle to seek truth in philosophy. Plato's family was not only wealthy in material terms but also rich in knowledge. After his father's death, his mother remarried Pyrilampus, a politician close to Pericles, who brought Plato connections with leading intellectuals and politicians. Although he initially intended to pursue politics or poetry, Plato soon realized that his path lay in exploring profound questions about life, society, and the nature of existence. Plato is also believed to have learned from pre-Socratic philosophers, such as Heraclitus and Parmenides, who posed questions about the nature of change and existence. These ideas influenced Plato in developing his later theory of forms. Additionally, Plato is thought to have studied with rhetoricians, such as Gorgias, who taught him the art of persuasion and debate. During his childhood, Plato also witnessed the decline of Athens, from a powerful city-state to one defeated in the Peloponnesian War. This event led Plato to realize that an ideal society must be governed by those with knowledge and virtue, rather than those with only power and wealth. This idea became the foundation for the Republic, his most famous work. Plato was also educated in music and poetry, fields he later criticized in the Republic as potentially corrupting the soul. However, during his childhood, he was exposed to the works of Homer and Hesiod, the great poets of ancient Greece. Chapter 2, Meeting and Studying with Socrates, around 407 BC, 399 BC. At around the age of 20, Plato met Socrates, a unique philosopher who did not write books but used speech to stimulate thought. This encounter was like a fateful spark, completely altering the trajectory of Plato's life. Previously, he had dreamed of a career in politics or poetry, but the allure of Socrates' lifestyle and dialogic method led him to abandon everything to pursue philosophy. Socrates, with his unrelenting questioning style, became a great teacher, leading Plato into the world of profound ideas. From 407 BC to 399 BC, Plato was a close disciple of Socrates, eagerly listening to debates on the streets of Athens. Socrates did not teach by imposing but by asking questions, forcing interlocutors to discover truth themselves. This method, later called the Socratic method, deeply embedded itself in Plato's thinking, shaping how he wrote his later dialogues. But joy was short-lived. In 399 BC, Socrates was sentenced to death by the Athenian authorities on charges of corrupting the youth and impiety toward the gods. Plato, then about 28 years old, witnessed his teacher drink the hemlock, an image that haunted him forever. Socrates' death was not only a personal loss but also a profound shock, making Plato realize that philosophy needed protection in a chaotic society. He began writing to preserve his teacher's legacy, making Socrates the central figure in his works. At the same time, this event spurred Plato to seek a new path, where philosophy was not just words but the foundation for an ideal society. These years were also the period when Plato began to shape his ideas about the role of philosophy in building an ideal society. He realized that philosophy was not only about seeking truth but also a tool to improve people and society. During this time, Plato also learned from Socrates' debates with rhetoricians, such as Protagoras and Gorgias, who taught him the art of debate and persuasion. These experiences helped Plato develop his skill in writing dialogues, a literary form he would use to convey his philosophical ideas. Plato also began reflecting on the nature of ethics and justice, themes that would become central in his later works, such as the Republic. Socrates' death also made Plato realize that an ideal society must be governed by those with knowledge and virtue, rather than those with only power and wealth. This idea became the foundation for his later works, especially the Republic, where he proposed the concept of the philosopher king. These years were the period when Plato began to shape his ideas about the role of philosophy in building an ideal society. Chapter 3, Travel and Research, 399 BC, 387 BC. The death of Socrates in 399 BC left a great void in Plato's heart, while also prompting him to leave Athens to embark on a 12-year journey to seek knowledge and shape his ideas. His first stop was Megara, where he studied with Euclid, a philosopher of the Megarian school, who emphasized logic and dialectics. These discussions helped Plato hone his debating skills, preparing him for his later philosophical dialogues. Next, Plato went to Cyrene in North Africa, where he studied mathematics with Theodorus, a renowned mathematician. Mathematics, with its precision and abstraction, sparked his curiosity about the nature of reality. Afterward, he set foot in southern Italy, where he encountered the disciples of Pythagoras. There, Plato was fascinated by exploring music theory, astronomy, and the concept of the harmony of the universe, ideas later reflected in Timaeus. The influence of Pythagoras laid the groundwork for the theory of forms, as Plato began to envision a transcendent world of perfect concepts. The trip to Sicily was a significant turning point, but also full of challenges. In Syracuse, Plato met Dion, a young statesman, and tried to convince the tyrant Dionysius I that philosophy could improve the art of governance. However, Dionysius I, being authoritarian, did not embrace this idea. He became angry, even ordering Plato to be sold into slavery. Fortunately, Plato was freed by a friend, but this bitter experience made him realize that philosophy needed to be combined with education and power to transform society. In 387 BC, Plato returned to Athens with a clearer vision of his mission. He purchased a plot of land near the grove of Academe and founded the Academy, the first university in Western history. The Academy was not only a place for teaching philosophy but also a multidisciplinary research center. From mathematics to astronomy and politics. Plato believed that knowledge was the key to building a just society, and the Academy was the symbol of this ideal. These years of travel broadened Plato's perspective, allowing him to integrate ideas from various sources, from the logic of the Megarians, the mathematics of Cyrene, to the mysticism of Pythagoras. The experience in Sicily reinforced his belief in the role of the philosopher in politics, leading to the idea of the philosopher king in the Republic. This period was a turning point, transforming Plato from a disciple of Socrates into an independent thinker, ready to leave an eternal mark on the history of philosophy. Chapter 4, Founding the Academy and the Peak of His Career, 387 BC, 347 BC. After a 12-year journey of travel and research, Plato returned to Athens in 387 BC with a clear vision: philosophy must become the foundation for an ideal society. With financial support from patrons, he purchased a plot of land near the grove of Academe, about 1.5 kilometers from Athens, and founded the Academy, the first university in Western history. The Academy was not only a place for teaching philosophy but also a multidisciplinary research center, covering mathematics, astronomy, politics, and ethics. Plato believed that education was the key to training leaders with knowledge and virtue, who could govern society justly. Over the next nearly 40 years, Plato devoted himself entirely to the Academy and the creation of philosophical masterpieces. This was the peak of his career, with works such as the Republic, Symposium, Phaedo, and Timaeus. In the Republic, Plato painted a picture of an ideal society, where philosopher kings rule with reason and knowledge. He also introduced the theory of forms, asserting that the material world is merely a shadow of a higher reality, where absolute concepts like beauty, goodness, and justice exist. This work was not only a political theory but also a call to live a meaningful life based on truth and ethics. Symposium is a hymn to love, depicting the journey from desire to understanding eternal beauty. Through speeches, Plato explores the nature of love, from physical attraction to the longing for knowledge and absolute beauty. Phaedo recounts the final hours of Socrates, affirming the immortality of the soul and emphasizing the importance of philosophy in preparing for death. Meanwhile, Timaeus explores the origin of the universe through a metaphysical lens, presenting a cosmological model with a creator and fundamental elements. At the Academy, Plato was not only a thinker but also an outstanding educator. He trained many talented students, including Aristotle, who later became his philosophical rival. Plato believed that philosophy must transform individuals before transforming society, and the Academy became a symbol of this ideal. It attracted minds eager for knowledge from across Greece, making Athens the intellectual center of the ancient world. In the final years of this period, Plato continued to write and teach, tirelessly exploring questions about the nature of reality, ethics, and politics. He passed away in 347 BC, but his legacy, through the Academy and his works, continued to live on, shaping Western thought for millennia. Chapter 5, Final Years and Legacy, 347 BC. Plato passed away in 347 BC, at the age of 80 or 81, in Athens, the city he had been devoted to throughout his life. He was buried in the grounds of the Academy, where he had dedicated nearly 40 years to teaching and research. Plato's death was not only the end of a personal journey but also the beginning of an eternal legacy, shaping Western thought for millennia. Before his death, Plato had prepared for the continuation of the Academy by passing its leadership to Speusippus, his nephew. Speusippus, though not as famous as Aristotle, maintained and developed the Academy, ensuring that Plato's philosophical ideals continued to spread. After Plato's death, the Academy continued to exist and thrive under the guidance of other scholars, such as Socrates and Polemon. It became a leading intellectual center, attracting thinkers from across Greece and beyond. The Academy existed for nearly 900 years, until it was closed in the 6th century AD under Emperor Justinian, who viewed it as a threat to Christianity. Nevertheless, Plato's legacy did not fade. His works were preserved, studied, and disseminated through generations, from Islamic scholars in the Middle Ages to Renaissance thinkers in Europe. Plato's theory of forms became a cornerstone of Western philosophy, influencing Neoplatonism and Christian thought. The idea of a transcendent world of perfect concepts inspired theologians and philosophers, from Augustine to Descartes. The Republic, with its vision of an ideal society governed by philosopher kings, remains a source of inspiration for modern politicians and educators. Plato is revered as one of the three fathers of Western philosophy, alongside Socrates and Aristotle, and his works continue to be taught in universities worldwide. Although he lived in an era without material awards like medals or honors, the respect posterity has shown Plato, through the study, preservation, and development of his ideas, is an eternal testament to his stature. Plato's legacy is not only his philosophical works but also the spirit of exploration, thirst for knowledge, and belief in the power of reason. He proved that philosophy is not just theory but a tool to improve people and society, a message that remains relevant to this day. Chapter 6, Plato's Eternal Legacy. Plato was not only a philosopher but also an architect of Western thought, leaving an eternal legacy through his works, the Academy, and his vision of philosophy. His contributions shaped philosophy, politics, education, and science, profoundly influencing human civilization. In philosophy, Plato created the theory of forms, asserting that the material world is merely a shadow of a transcendent reality, where perfect concepts like beauty, goodness, and justice exist. Presented in the Republic, Phaedo, and Symposium, this theory became a cornerstone of Western philosophy, inspiring thinkers from Augustine to Kant. Plato also laid the foundation for political philosophy through the idea of the philosopher king, arguing that only those with knowledge and virtue are worthy of ruling. The Republic is not only a philosophical work but also a call to build an ideal society based on reason. In education, Plato founded the Academy in 387 BC, the first university in history, which trained thinkers like Aristotle. The Academy not only taught philosophy but also researched mathematics, astronomy, and ethics, reflecting Plato's belief that knowledge is the key to improving people and society. The Academy existed for nearly 900 years, becoming a symbol of scholarship and educational ideals. Plato's works, such as the Republic, Symposium, Phaedo, Timaeus, Apology, and Gorgias, are masterpieces of literature and philosophy. They use the dialogue form to explore questions about ethics, justice, love, and the universe, while preserving Socrates' legacy. These works were preserved through the Middle Ages by Islamic scholars, then reintroduced to Europe, contributing to scholasticism and the Renaissance. In science, Plato indirectly influenced through cosmological ideas in Timaeus, where he described the universe as a harmonious system arranged by a creator. Though metaphysical, this model inspired later scientists. In aesthetics, Symposium and Phaedo explore beauty and art, laying the groundwork for aesthetic theory. Plato's legacy is timeless. He received no medals or awards, but the respect posterity has shown, through the study and application of his ideas, is the greatest reward. From philosophy to politics, from education to science, Plato proved that philosophy is a flame illuminating the path for humanity, a legacy that still burns brightly in the minds of today's generations.